As the first light of dawn touches the rugged landscape of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, I stand among my fellow rangers at the base camp, the chill of the morning mingling with a sense of anticipation. My name's Koa. I'm a park ranger who's walked these trails and climbed these ridges more times than I can count. Today, though, the familiar terrain feels different, shadowed with uncertainty. "Hey, Koa, you all right, brah?" a voice asks, pulling me back to the present. I turn to see Leilani, a fellow ranger and my best friend since we were knee-high to a grasshopper. Lonnie's always been the kind of person who lights up a room, or in this case, the dense forest of the national park. Her hair, a cascade of dark brown curls, is pulled back into a practical ponytail. Her almost jet-black eyes, sharp and alert, missing nothing, scan me for any sign of distress. I nod, forcing a half-smile. "Yeah, you know me, sister. I'm solid. Just got a feeling, you know." My gaze drifts over the expanse of the park, the volcanic land that's part of my soul. Lonnie leans in, her voice lowering to a whisper. "I feel it too. Something's off today." "For real?" I ask. "Yeah, this morning as I wake up, I see..." Her voice trails off as she glances around, ensuring no one else is within earshot. She leans in so close I can hear the breath of her whisper. "I saw something weird by the old lava flow, like shadows moving. Not normal." Before she can elaborate, Captain Corsero, a robust figure with years of experience etched into his weathered face, calls the team to attention. His gruff voice cuts through the morning chill. Standing tall and imposing, he gathers us in a semicircle. "Listen up, everybody," he begins, his gravelly voice carrying through the crisp morning air. "Last night, the Geological Survey detected unusual volcanic activities on Kilauea. Increased seismic activity and gas emissions suggest that something's brewing beneath the surface." A collective murmur of concern ripples through the group. Mount Kilauea, one of the most active volcanoes on Earth, is a sleeping giant that we respect and fear in equal measure. "Looks like Pele is stirring," Lonnie mutters, referring to the Hawaiian goddess of volcanoes and fire. Her tone is one of reverence. "There's more," the team leader continues. "We've got a missing persons report. A family of Howleys, a woman named Sarah Jenkins and her 2 young boys, Tyler and Ethan, went for a hike yesterday near the Chain of Craters Road and haven't returned." Lonnie and I exchange glances. The Chain of Craters Road area is vast and can be treacherous, even for seasoned professionals, let alone tourists from the mainland. "It's our job to locate them," Corsero says. "We'll split into teams to cover more ground." He unfolds a map, pointing to various locations. We all huddle around to study the map. "Saito," he calls out, staring at me. "You're with Lennox." He shifts his gaze to Lonnie. "Start at the Kalapana Trail and work your way north. Keep your radios on and report anything out of the ordinary." As Corsero's orders sink in, a flurry of activity erupts among the rangers. The normally serene morning at the park transforms into a hive of focused urgency. Each ranger, aware of the gravity of the situation, springs into action. I turn to gather my equipment. As a seasoned tracker, my backpack is filled with essentials: a GPS, a detailed topographical map of the park, high-powered binoculars, and various other tools for navigating and surviving in rugged terrain. Beside me, Lonnie, a skilled technical rescue expert, meticulously checks her gear, ensuring that everything is in perfect condition for whatever complex rescue scenarios we might encounter in the park's challenging terrain. Her bag is filled with specialized equipment: ropes, pulleys, carabiners, and safety harnesses. As I strap my boots tightly, ensuring they are fit, I glance at Lonnie. She catches my eye, offering a nod of solidarity. "What do you think, Koa?" she asks quietly, her voice tinged with the unspoken worry we all feel. "You reckon we'll find them?" I pause, adjusting the strap of my pack. In moments like these, it's not just about what you say, but how you say it. Confidence can be as contagious as fear in these situations. "You forget who you're talking to?" I say with a half smirk, trying to lighten the mood. "I'm the best tracker on the Big Island. If they're out there, we'll find them." She gives a small laugh. the tension in her shoulders easing ever so slightly. "That's what I like to hear. Let's bring them home." The early morning light filters through the dense canopy as we load the Land Rover, casting a soft glow on the rugged terrain of the park. The engine roars to life, and we head towards the search area. As I navigate the familiar route towards the Kalapana Trail, the connection I feel to this land pulsates through me. This place, with its rugged beauty and untamed wilderness, has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. It's more than just a job. It's a calling, a deep-rooted bond with the land that nurtures and challenges me in equal measure. Lonnie, sitting beside me, is lost in her own thoughts as we pass our old stomping grounds. Growing up, we spent countless summers exploring the hidden corners of this paradise, from diving into the crystal-clear waters of hidden coves to racing each other up the ancient lava trails. The closer we get the base of Kilauea, the more evident the signs of recent volcanic activity become. Thin wisps of steam rise from cracks in the ground, a stark reminder of the raw power beneath our feet. "Look at that," Lonnie murmurs, her eyes fixed on a newly formed fissure, its edges blackened and sharp. The earth here seems alive, breathing and shifting with a life of its own. The beauty of it is both mesmerizing and unsettling. I pull the vehicle over, and we step out cautiously, scanning the area. The ground feels unusually warm under our boots. "This wasn't here last week," I note, my voice low. The fresh lava flow, now solidified, creates an eerie, undulating terrain that stretches towards the horizon. We proceed with increased vigilance, knowing that the volcanic activity could pose a hazard not just to the missing family, but also to us. Paths that were safe yesterday might not be today. Our eyes scour every inch of the terrain, searching for any clue that might lead us to the missing family. The silence is heavy, broken only by the occasional crackle of our radios and the distant rumble of the volcano. Suddenly, I spot something unusual in the distance. It's a small, dark object, partially obscured by the rough, newly solidified lava. "Over there!" I gesture to Lonnie, pointing towards the object. Reaching the spot, a chill runs down my spine. It's a camera, half buried in the hardened lava. The lens is melted, warped by the intense heat, but the body of the camera is mostly intact. It's disturbing evidence that the family we're looking for might have been caught in the lava flow. Moving cautiously over the rough terrain, we soon come across more signs of the family's presence. A torn piece of a map flutters against a jagged rock, and an aluminum water bottle, its logo partially melted, lies discarded nearby. Lonnie kneels down, her hands carefully sifting through the ash and debris. The somber mood intensifies as she uncovers a small backpack, partially buried and singed at the edges. It's a vivid red against the monochrome landscape of black and gray. My heart sinks a bit more with each brush of her hand, revealing the harsh reality of our mission. She looks up at me, her eyes reflecting sorrow. "It's one of the kids' backpacks," she says quietly, holding it up. The name Ethan is embroidered in bold letters on the back. I crouch beside Lonnie, examining the backpack. Inside, there are remnants of a child's adventure. A crumpled map of the park, a small toy car, and a half-eaten snack bar. Everything is coated with a thin layer of ash. Lonnie carefully logs the coordinates of our discovery on the GPS. She then radios back to base, her voice steady but tinged with the gravity of our find. "Base, this is Ranger Lennox. We've found some items belonging to the missing family near a new lava flow. We're going to continue searching the area." As she communicates with the base, I can't shake a gut feeling that there's more to this. I decide to extend our search perimeter. The landscape around us is treacherous, a labyrinth of hardened lava and jagged rocks. Despite the weight of what we've already discovered, something urges me on. It's just a hunch, but hunches have always served me well in the past. The air is thick with the heat emanating from the ground, and the smell of sulfur hangs heavily around us. It's a surreal landscape, one that's both beautiful and brutal in its raw, natural power. Then, I see something that stops me in my tracks. There, in the middle of a large expanse of cooled lava, are footprints. Not just any footprints, but what appears to be a set of bare human footprints. These impressions in the hard, black surface look as if they were made when the lava was still molten, an impossibility for any living being to survive. I crouch down for a closer look, trying to make sense of what I'm seeing. The footprints are unmistakably human, each toe defined, the arch of a foot clearly visible. They lead away from the area where we found the camera and the backpack, weaving through the rough terrain. "Lonnie!" I call out, my voice barely above a whisper, not wanting to believe what I'm seeing. She finishes her transmission and hurries over, her expression turning to one of disbelief as she takes in the sight. "How is this even possible?" she murmurs, echoing my thoughts. We gingerly follow the tracks. The trail of footprints leads us further away from the barren lava field, towards a region where the volcanic devastation blends back into the lush greenery of the park. The footprints become less distinct on the softer ground, but we continue, guided by broken twigs and disturbed earth. We push forward, our senses heightened. The forest around us is alive with the sounds of nature, but to our trained ears, it's what's not heard that speaks louder. The usual chatter of birds and rustle of small creatures seems muted, as if the forest itself is holding its breath. Then, through the dense undergrowth, I catch a glimpse of something unusual. It's a figure, humanoid in shape, but its movements are odd, almost erratic. The figure is covered in what looks like volcanic ash, giving it an eerie, ghost-like appearance. I instinctively reach out, gently touching Lonnie's arm to draw her attention. My gesture is subtle, a silent communication perfected over years of working together in these unpredictable environments. We both freeze, our bodies tensing as we observe the figure through the thick foliage. Lonnie's eyes meet mine, a mixture of confusion and caution reflected in her gaze. With a slight nod, we agree to approach carefully, mindful of the potential risks. The figure moves with an uncanny grace, almost floating across the forest floor. Its movements are fluid yet disjointed, creating an unreal image against the backdrop of the green forest. As we inch closer, the air around us grows noticeably hotter, a stifling heat that seems to radiate from the figure itself. The ground beneath its feet is scorched, leaving a trail of smoldering embers and blackened earth in its wake. The underbrush, parched from the recent dry weather conditions, catches fire at the slightest touch of the entity's burning footsteps. The intensity of the heat emanating from the figure is like nothing I've ever experienced. It's as if the very essence of the volcano's core is encapsulated within this being. The dry underbrush ignites with alarming speed, the flames spreading rapidly through the dense vegetation. Lonnie and I exchange a look of alarm, realizing the danger we're in. The fire, spurred on by the hot, dry winds, quickly becomes a roaring blaze, consuming everything in its path. The forest around us transforms into a fiery hellscape within moments. The heat is suffocating, the air thick with smoke and the crackling of flames. We're forced to retreat, but the fire spreads with terrifying speed, cutting off our usual paths. Every direction seems to lead further into an inferno. We scramble over the rough terrain, the heat so intense it feels like our lungs are burning with each breath. We're both seasoned rangers, but this is beyond anything we've ever faced. I grab Lonnie's arm, pulling her away from a falling, flaming branch. We're running blind through the smoke, relying on instinct and our deep knowledge of the park's landscape. The visibility is near zero, the air a swirling mass of embers and ash. We stumble upon a narrow ravine, the only viable path away from the flames. The ground is uneven, treacherous with loose rocks and steep drops. We navigate it as quickly as we can, but it's like moving through molasses. Lonnie coughs violently, her face smeared with soot. I can see the fear in her eyes, a mirror of my own terror. "Keep moving," I shout, more to convince myself than her. The heat is relentless, an oppressive force that seems to press down on us from all sides. I can feel my skin burning, the heat searing through my clothes. My throat is parched, each breath a scorching gulp of hot air. Suddenly, a loud crack resonates through the air, and a tree collapses mere feet in front of us, blocking our path. The flames leap higher, fed by the fresh fuel. I frantically look for a way around, but the fire is closing in. In a desperate move, I lead us down a steep embankment, sliding and tumbling over rocks and debris. Lonnie follows without hesitation, trusting my lead. We land hard at the bottom, but there's no time to recover. We have to keep moving. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, we emerge from the smoke and flames, gasping for air. The world outside the fire zone seems eerily calm, as though unaware of the chaos we just escaped. We stumble back to our Land Rover, the vehicle a welcoming sight amidst the devastation. Climbing in, I start the engine and we drive away from the inferno, putting distance between us and the haunting image of the fiery figure in the blazing forest. Lonnie, still coughing from the smoke inhalation, manages to grab the radio and report back to base. Her voice is hoarse but urgent as she relays the situation. "Base, this is Lennox. We've got a wildfire situation. The area around the Kalapana Trail is engulfed. We need immediate backup and fire containment units." The radio crackles to life, and Captain Corsero's voice comes through, tense and authoritative. "Copy that, Lennox. We're mobilizing units now. Get to safety and stand by for further instructions." As I navigate the Land Rover through the park's winding paths, my mind races with thoughts of the figure we encountered. I glance over at Lonnie. She's deep in thought, her eyes distant. "What was that thing?" I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. The image of the fiery figure moving through the forest with an otherworldly grace is seared into my mind. She doesn't answer immediately, her gaze fixed on the passing landscape. Finally, she turns to me, her expression serious. "I think it was a lava walker," she says. "Lava walker?" I repeat, unfamiliar with the term. It sounds like something out of a myth or a horror story. "Yeah, I just made it up," Lonnie admits, a slight shrug accompanying her words. "It's like a skinwalker, but for volcanoes." "Seriously, Lonnie? Come on." I can't help but let out a skeptical laugh. Lonnie gives me a look, one that's both challenging and serious. "Okay, wise guy. You come up with a better explanation. What else could it have been?" I open my mouth to retort, but the words falter on my lips. I don't know. I finally confess, the words tasting like defeat. The more I think about it, the more I realize that there are things in this world that defy conventional understanding. As we approach the rendezvous point, the distant wail of sirens grows louder, slicing through the tense silence inside the vehicle. The sight that greets us is a flurry of activity. Fire containment units, park rangers, and emergency vehicles converge at the edge of the expanding wildfire. Captain Corsero stands in the midst of it all, a commanding presence as he directs the operations. His face is set in grim determination. As we pull up, he turns, spotting us immediately. His expression softens for a moment with relief at seeing us safe, before returning to its previous intensity. "You two all right?" he asks, eyeing our soot-covered faces and singed clothing. "We're okay, Captain," Lonnie responds, her voice hoarse but steady. "But we've got a serious situation. That fire is spreading fast, and there's something unusual about it." "Unusual?" he asks. I nod in agreement, still catching my breath. "We saw something in the forest, sir. It's hard to explain, but it seemed to be causing the fire, moving through the trees like it was part of the flames." Corsero's brow furrows, a skeptical look crossing his face. "Sounds like heat exhaustion, Saito. We need clear heads here." He gestures towards the medical tent. "Head over to the medics. Get yourselves checked out. If you're fit, I need you back on the line. This fire's not going to control itself, and we need all hands on deck." After a brief rest and rehydration, we don our firefighting gear, feeling the weight of responsibility on our shoulders. The afternoon sky is aglow with the raging fire, casting an eerie light over the park. We join a small team of rangers and firefighters, ready to venture into the heart of the wildfire. Helicopters and drones overhead coordinate our movement, but the journey is perilous. The air is thick with smoke, reducing visibility to mere feet. The heat is stifling, like walking through an open furnace. Embers whirl around us, carried by the hot winds, threatening to ignite anything remotely flammable. Suddenly, without warning, a massive flare-up erupts. A wall of fire explodes from the underbrush, fueled by a pocket of trapped gas. The force of the blaze is like a physical blow, knocking me off my feet. In the chaos, I'm separated from the rest of the team. I shout Lonnie's name, but my voice is lost in the cacophony of crackling flames and collapsing trees. Panic sets in as I realize I'm alone. The heat is so intense it feels like my skin is blistering through my protective gear. My breathing is the only sound that pierces the relentless roar of the flames. Each inhale and exhale echoes through my oxygen mask. The world around me is a terrifying landscape of fire and smoke. Trees, once towering and majestic, are now monstrous torches, their branches reaching out like fiery claws. I stumble over a fallen log, the wood crumbling under my weight, embers scattering like fiery rain. My heart pounds in my chest, a rapid drumbeat echoing the chaos around me. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spot a figure moving through the flames. For a moment, I think it's Lonnie, but as it comes closer, I realize it's something else entirely. The figure moves with an eerie grace, untouched by the fire that rages around it. As it approaches, the air around it seems to warp and ripple, the intense heat bending light itself. The flames seem to dance around it, converging into a swirling vortex of fire and ash. Just as the figure nears, a hand grabs mine, pulling me back to the harsh reality of the firestorm. I turn to see Lonnie, her face obscured by the visor of her protective gear. For a moment, in the surreal, smoky haze, she looks alien, a creature from another world in her fire-resistant suit. But it's her grip, firm and reassuring, that grounds me, convincing me she's very much human. "We can't stay here!" Her voice cuts through the roaring fire. The ground under our feet shifts unpredictably, the earth cracked and uneven from the intense heat. We dodge falling branches and leap over smoldering debris, the air thick with the acrid smell of burning wood and ash. As we navigate through the inferno, trying to stay ahead of the ever-advancing flames, a haunting sound pierces through the chaos. At first it seems like another trick of the fire, a howl of the wind perhaps, or the creaking of burning trees. But while we pause, panting and disoriented, the sound crystallizes into something unmistakably human. Voices, distant and ghostly, floating through the smoke. The voices aren't speaking in English, nor in the familiar pidgin that's like second nature to us. Instead, they're in Hawaiian, the language of our ancestors, a language we've heard in school, in cultural celebrations but never fully mastered. Despite our limited understanding, the tone of desperation is unmistakable. Their cries for help. The voices, haunting and persistent, draw us like a siren's call. We exchange a glance, the same thought mirrored in our eyes. We can't ignore this. We push forward towards the voices, time being our greatest enemy. The ground slopes sharply, leading to a steep ravine that cuts through the park like a scar. It's a natural barrier, one that the fire hasn't yet crossed, but the flames are close, hungrily licking at its edges. Lonnie and I cautiously approach the precipice of the ravine. The voices grow louder, clearer. They seem to be emanating from the depths of the ravine itself, rising up through the billowing smoke like a chorus of lost souls. Among the ghostly voices, Lonnie catches a word that sends a shiver down our spines. "Kapu," she whispers, her voice tinged with fear. The ancient Hawaiian term for forbidden or sacred reverberates through the fiery landscape, a warning unheeded by us until now. We stand frozen, the realization hitting us hard. We're on sacred ground, a place where the living are not meant to tread. The air grows heavy, charged with an otherworldly energy, as if the very spirits of the land are rising in anger against our intrusion. Suddenly, from the glow of molten rock and the charred remains of the forest, 3 figures emerge. At first, they appear as mere distortions in the heated air, like mirages born of the fire. But as they draw closer, their forms become horrifyingly clear. The largest of the 3 lava walkers strides forward with a dominating presence. Its body is a living tapestry of molten rock and fire. Flames lick across its surface, outlining muscles and limbs. Its eyes, glowing like coals, fix on us with an intensity that chills me to the core. Flanking the larger figure are 2 smaller ones, each moving with an eerie, fluid grace. Their childlike size gives me an unsettling feeling. The flames that envelop them cast their features in a grotesque, ever-changing dance of light and shadow. As they draw nearer, the terrifying truth dawns on us. These creatures, these lava walkers, are the missing family we've been searching for. The largest figure, the one that resembles the mother, extends a hand towards us. Her fingers, made of flowing lava and flickering flames, reach out in a gesture that's heartbreakingly human. Her eyes, glowing embers in a face of liquid rock, convey a mother's desperation. Even with our fire-resistant gear, we can feel our skin prickling painfully from the proximity. We back away slowly, our eyes locked on the haunting figures before us. An invisible barrier of heat pushes us back step by step. In our haste, we don't realize how close we are to the precipice. Lonnie stumbles, her foot slipping on the loose, ashy soil. For a heart-stopping moment, she teeters on the edge, her arms flailing for balance. Acting on instinct, I lunge forward, grabbing her firmly around the waist. With a desperate heave, I pull her back from the brink, both of us falling to the ground in a heap. I frantically search for any route of escape. Then, my eyes catch sight of a large, charred tree, its base weakened by the fire and the intense heat of the volcanic activity. I motion to Lonnie, pointing towards the tree. "Lonnie, the tree!" I shout over the roar of the flames. Understanding flashes in her eyes, and without another word, we spring into action. I grab my chainsaw, a tool I carry for creating fire breaks. As I rev up the chainsaw, the roar of its motor cuts through the crackling of the flames, a man-made growl against nature's fury. The chainsaw bites into the charred bark, sending a shower of embers into the air. I work quickly, the blade slicing through the weakened wood, the smell of burnt timber filling my nostrils. As the tree begins to give way, Lonnie braces herself against the trunk, using all her strength to guide it in the right direction. With a final forceful push, the tree begins to topple. We both jump back as it crashes down, creating a makeshift bridge across the ravine. We scramble across the fallen tree, the wood creaking and groaning under our weight. We barely make it to the other side of the ravine when a heart-wrenching scene unfolds behind us. The earth, weakened by the intense heat and the ravages of the fire, can no longer support Lava Walker's weight. The mother, still reaching out towards us, and her two smaller companions, are swallowed by the collapsing ground. They tumble into the abyss of the ravine, their forms dissolving into the molten rock below. A profound sadness grips me as I watch them disappear. Lonnie grabs my arm, pulling me away from the edge. "Koa, we have to keep moving," she urges, her voice thick with emotion. We move swiftly from the edge of the ravine, the heat of the inferno still pressing against our backs. Lonnie leads the way, her familiarity with the park's topography guiding us toward an elevated position, a rocky outcrop that offers a vantage point. As soon as we reach relative safety, still shaken by the harrowing sight of the lava walkers being swallowed by the earth, I pull out my radio, my hands still trembling from the intensity of what we just witnessed. I know our immediate priority is to prevent whatever is back there from spreading. "Base, this is Saito. We need immediate air support on these coordinates." I relay the exact location of the ravine, emphasizing the necessity of a rapid response. The response from dispatch is swift and professional. "Copy that, Saito. Air support is en route. Hang tight and stay safe. Over." Pulling off our masks, we take in deep, desperate gulps of the fresher air now available. The sensation of breathing without the constraints of our gear is profoundly relieving. As we catch our breath, a faint, distant hum grows progressively louder. I look up, straining my eyes against the smoke-filled sky. The sound intensifies, a deep, resonating thrum that vibrates through the air. I catch sight of the unmistakable silhouette of a C-130, its powerful engines cutting through the chaos of the wildfire. As the aircraft unleashes its payload onto the ravine, a cascade of fire retardant billows down in a massive cloud, blanketing the area in a surreal pink hue. The inferno below begins to subside under the deluge, the flames dampened by the torrent of chemicals. Lonnie turns to me, her eyes reflecting a myriad of emotions. My hand reaches out, gently touching her cheek, smudged with soot and sweat. "You okay?" I ask. Without saying a word, she pulls me close, her lips meeting mine in a passionate kiss. It's as if she's always wanted to do this. In the face of the unpredictable and fleeting nature of life, she seizes the opportunity, knowing it might never come again. As quickly as Lonnie kisses me, she pulls back, a flush of embarrassment coloring her cheeks. She starts to apologize, her words tumbling out in a rush. "Koa, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have, Before she can finish, I close the distance between us, returning her affections with equal fervor. It's a kiss filled with all the unsaid things, the emotions that have been simmering beneath the surface for far too long. The world around us seems to pause, the crackling of the fire and the distant sounds of the emergency response fading into the background. It's just Lonnie and me, surrounded by the wake of our ordeal. In the aftermath of the wildfire, the efforts of the emergency response teams gradually bring the blaze under control. The raging flames that once threatened to consume everything in their path are reduced to smoldering ashes and charred remnants. The missing Jenkins family, Sarah, Tyler, and Ethan, are officially listed as tragic victims of the fire. Within the ranks of the Rangers and the emergency teams, whispers about the lava walkers circulate in hushed tones. But in the official reports, there is no mention of the mysterious figures we encountered. As the weeks pass and the charred landscape gradually begins its slow recovery, life for Lonnie and I returns to familiar rhythms, patrolling the trails, guiding tours, and educating visitors about the park's unique ecosystem and geological features. Though life has seemingly returned to its regular patterns, there's an undeniable shift between Lonnie and me that's impossible to ignore. In the quiet moments when our glances meet, there are hints of something profound and unspoken that's blossomed between us. Despite everything that unfolded, I would never discourage anyone from visiting this majestic place. Kilauea, with her raw and untamed beauty, holds a special kind of magic that everyone should witness at least once in their lifetime. So, to those who wish to venture into Hawaii volcanoes, I offer these words of advice. Respect the land and heed its warnings. And if during your journey you ever hear the forests whispering in Hawaiian, run. As a skilled nature photographer, I've explored countless breathtaking locations. But there's something out the Pacific Northwest that has always called out to me. The majestic landscapes, diverse wildlife, and untamed wilderness beckon like an irresistible siren song. With a sense of anticipation and excitement, I meticulously planned my week-long camping trip to this enchanting core of the world. I went through my gear with care, ensuring that I had packed all the essentials, my trusty camping supplies and survival tools. The Pacific Northwest could be unforgiving, but I was prepared for whatever it had in store for me. The day of my departure finally arrived, and my heart raced as I loaded my vehicle and set off towards the remote wilderness. As I drove, my mind was filled with vivid images of the stunning landscapes I was about to encounter, and the wildlife I hoped to capture with my camera. The journey was long, but every mile brought a fresh sense of awe and wonder. The road meandered through dense forests of towering trees, their leaves a vibrant tapestry of colors that seemed to sway in a rhythmic dance. The further I traveled, the more I felt a profound sense of peace enveloping me, as if I was leaving my worries and the chaos of everyday life behind. As I reached my destination, I was greeted by a secluded campsite nestled among the lush greenery and serenaded by a chorus of birdsong. I couldn't have asked for a more perfect spot. I took a moment to savor the scene, inhaling the crisp, fresh air and feeling the gentle warmth of the sun on my face. The campsite was a picturesque haven nestled within the untamed beauty of the Pacific Northwest wilderness. A small, flat clearing in the midst of towering evergreens provided the perfect spot for my tent. The trees formed natural canopy overhead, their branches swaying gently in the breeze, creating a soothing, rustling sound that echoed throughout the camp. The forest floor was covered in a thick layer of soft pine needles and scattered with leaves in various shades of green, orange, and brown, creating a vibrant tapestry underfoot. A few steps away from my tent, a crackling campfire sat at the center of a circle of large rocks, its warm glow casting flickering shadows on the surrounding trees. To one side of the campsite, a babbling brook flowed over smooth, moss-covered stones, its crystal-clear waters providing a soothing soundtrack to the serene environment. The air was crisp and fresh, carrying the scents of damp earth, pine, and wood smoke, which blended together to create a fragrance unique to the forest. A short distance from the camp, a well-worn trail led deeper into the woods, inviting exploration and adventure. The trail is flanked by ferns and other native plants, creating a lush green corridor that seemed to beckon me further into the heart of the wilderness. With a sense of purpose, I set about making this little corner of the wilderness my temporary home. I pitched my tent, organized my belongings, and familiarized myself with the area. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, I decided to take a short hike to scout for potential photography spots. As I walked through the forest, I was struck by the sheer abundance of life that thrived around me. The soft crunch of leaves underfoot, the distant calls of birds, and the soothing scent of pine needles filled my senses. My mind raced with possibilities, and I couldn't wait to capture the magic of this place with my camera. The following morning I awoke before the first light of dawn, eager to start my day. As the sun began to rise, casting a golden glow across the landscape, I grabbed my camera and ventured deeper into the woods. My eyes scanned the terrain, seeking out subjects to photograph. The world around me seemed to come alive, and I felt an indescribable connection to the land as I snapped photo after photo, attempting to capture the ethereal beauty of the sea. Over the next few days, I found myself completely immersed in the wilderness. I photographed everything from the majestic elk grazing in the meadows to the crystal-clear streams that wandered their way through the forest floor. The connection I felt to the land was unlike anything I had ever experienced, and I knew that this trip would leave an indelible mark on my soul. I have been out exploring and photographing the breathtaking landscapes of the Pacific Northwest for several days, each one more captivating than the last. With each click of the camera shutter, I felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that I was preserving the beauty of this place in my images. One evening, as I returned to my campsite after a long day of hiking and photography, I eagerly scrolled through the photos I'd taken, hoping to relive the day's wonders. My heart skipped a beat when I stumbled upon an image of a peculiar creature that I had unwittingly captured. The creature captured in my photograph was a mesmerizing blend of the familiar and the extraordinary. Its body was roughly the size of a large dog, covered in a coat of dense, shimmering fur that seemed to change colors ever so subtly, as if mimicking the hues of the surrounding environment. Its legs were long and slender, but with a powerful musculature that suggested it was capable of both incredible speed and agility. The creature's paws were large and padded, with curved, sharp claws that spoke to its ability to navigate the rough terrain of the forest with ease. That head of the creature was perhaps the most striking feature. It bore a pair of large, almond-shaped eyes, with irises that seemed to hold an almost otherworldly glow. The eyes conveyed an intelligence and depth that seemed to pierce right through me, as if the creature could see straight into my soul. Its snout was elongated, reminiscent of a wolf or a fox, with sharp, pointed ears that stood erect and twitched at the slightest sound. The creature's nose was moist and black, and it appeared to be constantly sniffing the air as if searching for something or someone. The most peculiar aspect of the creature, however, was the long, sinuous tail it extended from the base of its spine. The tail was covered in the same shimmering fur as the rest of its body, and it moved with a head-nodded grace that seemed to have a life of its own. As I studied the image of the creature, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was something truly unique, a being that defied categorization and existed outside the realm of known species. What on earth is that? I wondered, my curiosity piqued. As I continued to review my images, I noticed that the creature seemed to have been watching me from a distance throughout my trip. The realization sent a shiver down my spine, but it also ignited a spark of determination within me. I need to learn more about this creature and where it came from, I thought, my mind racing of questions and possibilities. The following morning, I awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. After a quick breakfast, I grabbed my camera and set off to explore the surrounding area, searching for any clues that might lead me to the creature or shed light on its origins. I moved through the forest with a keen eye, scanning the landscape for any signs of the enigmatic being. As I trekked deeper into the wilderness, I began to notice subtle changes in the environment. The air seemed to grow heavier, and an eerie silence descended upon the woods. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, but my determination to uncover the truth about the creature only grew stronger. For hours I wandered through the forest, following the faintest of tracks, and any hint that might lead me closer to the creature. My mind was filled with a mix of excitement and apprehension, wondering what I would find and what secrets the creature might hold. As the day wore on, I stumbled upon a series of unusual markings etched into the bark of the trees, forming a pattern that seemed to beckon me forward. The markings appeared to have been made by the creature, perhaps as a form of communication or a trail left behind for me to follow. Could this be a message from the creature? I wondered, my heart pounding with anticipation. I followed the trail of markings, my curiosity driving me deeper into the unknown. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the forest floor and bathing the landscape in eerie golden glow. As darkness crept in, I knew that I was running out of time, but I couldn't turn back now. As I reached a small clearing, I found myself standing before a hidden cave. The entrance to the cave was an intriguing sight, a stark contrast to the lush forest surrounding it. Partially concealed by an overgrowth of creeping vines and moss-covered rocks, the mouth of the cave seemed to be whispering secrets, inviting me to venture into its depths. The opening was jagged and irregular, as though it had been formed by the forces of nature over countless years. It was just wide enough for me to pass through, but its height gradually diminished as it extended into the darkness, hinting at the narrow passages that lay within. A sense of ancient history emanated from the cave, with the walls at the entrance bearing the marks of time, weathered and worn by the elements, with layers of mineral deposits forming intricate patterns on the rough surface. A cool, damp breeze wafted from the cave, carrying with it the earthy scent of the underground world that lay hidden beyond the entrance. The temperature dropped noticeably as I approached, and a shiver ran down my spine. Whether from the cold or the eerie atmosphere, I couldn't be sure. I hesitated for a moment, my curiosity warring with the unsettling sensation that had settled over me. Taking a deep breath, I mustered my courage and stepped into the cave, the shadow swallowing me whole. The air inside the cave was damp and cool, carrying with it the scent of the earth and the faintest hint of something else, something I couldn't quite place. The walls were rough and cold to the touch, the cave's interior illuminated only by the weak beam of my flashlight, which seemed to struggle against the oppressive darkness. As I ventured further into the cave, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was trespassing in a place where I didn't belong. My steps grew hesitant, my heart pounding in my ears as the darkness seemed to close in around me. Each echoing footstep resonated within the cave, as if announcing my presence to unseen entities lurking in the shadows. A gut feeling like an alarm ringing deep within me told me that I wasn't welcome here. The sensation was almost palpable, a tangible pressure that urged me to turn back to leave the secrets of the cave undiscovered. As much as I wanted to learn more about the mysterious creature that had led me here, I couldn't ignore the instinctual warning that told me to retreat. With a heavy heart, I decided to heed my instincts and leave the cave. As I retraced my steps, the darkness seemed to cling to me, reluctant to release me from its grasp. When I finally emerged into the fading daylight, I felt a mixture of relief and disappointment wash over me. I reluctantly left the cave behind and made my way back to my campsite, the fading daylight casting long shadows across the forest floor. When I finally reached my campsite, I felt a sense of relief wash over me as the familiar surroundings welcomed me back. The warmth of the fire and the comforting aroma of a simple meal cooking over the flames helped to dispel a lingering unease that clung to me from my encounter with the cave. As night settled over the forest, I sat by the fire, pondering the strange events of the day. The mysteries of the mysterious creature in the cave had captured my imagination, and I knew that I couldn't abandon my search just yet. Though I had been warned of the dangers, my curiosity remained undeterred. With a renewed sense of determination, I resolved to venture out once more the following day, intent on exploring more of the area in the hope of learning more about the elusive creature. As I drifted off to sleep, my dreams were filled with shadowy figures and the haunting call of a creature that seemed to defy understanding. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of birdsong and the gentle rustling of leaves as the breeze whispered through the trees. The sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting dappled patterns on the forest floor and filling me with a sense of hope and anticipation. After a hearty breakfast, I packed my gear and set out to explore the surrounding area. The forest seemed to come alive around me, its vibrant greens and the cacophony of birds and insects creating a stark contrast to the eerie silence I had experienced within the cave. As I ventured deeper into the wilderness, my senses sharpened, attuned to any clues that might hint at the creature's presence. I began to notice unusual tracks and markings, unlike any I had ever encountered. These enigmatic signs piqued my curiosity and fueled my determination to learn more of the mysterious being that had captivated my imagination. As the forest thickened, I stumbled upon a small, secluded cabin nestled among the trees. A thin stream of smoke wafted from the chimney, inviting me to investigate. Hesitantly, I approached the cabin, wondering if its inhabitants might have any knowledge of the creature. As I knocked on the door, it creaked open to reveal an old man with a weathered face and twinkling eyes. He introduced himself as Tom and welcomed me into his humble abode. As we settled by the fire, I cautiously broached the subject of the creature, showing him the photograph I had taken. Tom's eyes widened as he examined the image. "Ah, so you've seen it too," he murmured. "This creature has been part of our local folklore for centuries. It's known as the Shadow Walker, a being that's managed to remain elusive to human contact all these years." He shared tales of fleeting glimpses in the moonlight, eerie cries echoing through the forest, and peculiar tracks left behind in the soft earth. The stories only served to fuel my fascination with the Shadow Walker. But as the fire crackled and the shadows danced on the cabin walls, Tom's expression was somber. "Listen, James," he warned. "I have to be honest with you. This creature is said to be fiercely territorial, and those who get too close may find themselves in danger. It can be aggressive if it feels threatened." I shifted uncomfortably by excitement tempered by Tom's warning. "But don't you think it's important to learn more about the Shadow Walker?" I asked. "It could be a new species, a discovery that could change our understanding of the natural world." Tom sighed. "I understand your curiosity, and believe me, I felt it too. But sometimes there are things in this world that are best left undisturbed. You must be cautious if you continue your search." As I left the cabin and resumed my journey, Tom's words echoed in my mind. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor. The air grew colder, and an oppressive silence enveloped the woods. Despite my growing unease, I couldn't shake my desire to unravel the mystery of the Shadow Walker. I pressed on, following the trail of peculiar tracks and markings that seemed to lead me deeper into the creature's domain. As darkness enveloped the forest, I stumbled upon a small clearing. The trees seemed to bend inward, their branches reaching for one another, as if trying to share. In the center of the clearing stood a massive, gnarled tree, its trunk mired by strange gouges and markings that appeared to be the work of the Shadow Walker. I approached the tree cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. "Is this where you've been hiding all this time?" I whispered, half expecting the creature to emerge from the shadows. Instead, there was only silence, broken by the distant howl of a wolf, or perhaps something else entirely. I shivered, suddenly feeling very alone in the darkness. I decided to head back to my campsite before I test my luck, any further poking around where I shouldn't. As I approached the campsite, a sudden uneasy feeling crept over me, like an icy hand gripping my spine. I slowed my pace, instinctively reaching for the knife I had strapped to my belt. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as I realized something was amiss. Rounding the last bend, My heart nearly stopped as I caught sight of the creature standing in my campsite, its eerie, reflective eyes fixed on my belongings. It was even more bizarre and fascinating up close, its body covered in a mixture of fur and scales, with powerful limbs and a long, sinuous tail. Panic and awe wrestled within me as I took in the creature that had haunted my dreams and consumed my thoughts. I knew I had to act quickly to protect myself and drive the creature away from my campsite. It was much larger and stronger than I had anticipated, and I had no idea how it would react to my presence. My hand gripped the knife tighter, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. I recalled the other tools I had packed for my trip, items that might give me the upper hand in this unexpected confrontation. With a deep breath, I reached in my backpack and pulled out the flare gun I had brought for emergencies. I aimed it toward the sky, knowing the bright flash and loud noise might startle the creature and give me a chance to scare it away. "Please work," I whispered under my breath as I squeezed the trigger. The flare shot into the sky, its brilliant light illuminating the campsite and the surrounding forest. The creature reared back, startled by the sudden noise and brightness, and I seized the opportunity to make my stand. The tension in the air was palpable as I stood face to face with a shadow walker. It's reflected by his locked-onto mind. The creature seemed to study me, perhaps trying to gauge my intentions, and I couldn't help but feel a mixture of awe and fear at the sight of the creature that had consumed my thoughts. As the flare continued to burn in the sky, casting harsh shadows across the campsite, I took a step forward, attempting to muster an air of confidence that I didn't truly feel. I held the knife firmly in my hand, my knuckles turning white with the effort. In my other hand, the portable sound alarm screeched relentlessly, its high-pitched wail echoing through the trees. The shadow walker shifted uneasily, its gaze darting between me and the various items strewn about the campsite. It was clear that the creature was disoriented and unsure of how to react to the situation. Its long, sinuous tail flicked back and forth, betraying its agitation. As I moved closer, the creature let out a guttural snarl, burying its teeth in a clear warning. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to swallow the fear that threatened to choke me. To have any hope of driving the shadow walker away. "I'd only hurt you," I said, my voice barely audible above the sound of the alarm. "But you need to leave now." The creature hesitated, its ears twitching at the sound of my voice. For a moment I thought I saw a flicker of understanding in its eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a renewed sense of weariness. I took another step forward and waved the knife in front of me, the blade glinting in the light of the fading flare. The shadow walker recoiled, its eyes narrowing as it assessed the threat. With a final burst of courage, I slagged my foot on the ground and shouted, "Cole!" The shadow walker let out a low, rumbling growl, but to my relief it began to back away, its eyes never leaving mine. As it retreated, I noticed the way its powerful limbs moved with a deceptive grace, belying its formidable size and strength. With each step the creature took away from my campsite, I felt a small measure of relief, even as I remained on high alert, prepared for any sudden movements. Eventually the creature reached the edge of the clearing, where the shadows of the forest seemed to reach out to involve it. As the shadow walker disappeared into the darkness, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and disappointment. I had come so close to the creature that had captured my imagination, if the confrontation had only served to underscore the gulf that existed between our two worlds. As the adrenaline from the confrontation gradually faded, I was left with a newfound appreciation for the precarious balance that existed between humans and a natural world. My encounter with the Shadow Walker had taught me that there were still mysteries lurking the shadows, and that it was crucial to respect the boundaries that nature had set. With a sense of urgency, I set about packing up my gear, my hands shaking from the lingering effects of fear and excitement. I knew that I couldn't afford to linger in the creature's territory any longer, and I felt an overwhelming desire to put some distance between myself and the enigmatic being. As I stuffed my belongings in my backpack, I couldn't help but cast furtive glances toward the edge of the clearing, half expecting to see the creature emerge from the darkness once more. The forest seemed to be holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. With my gear finally packed, I hoisted the heavy backpack onto my shoulders and began the long trek back to civilization. I moved quickly, my footsteps echoing through the silent forest, as I tried to put as much distance between myself and the campsite as possible. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I found myself glancing over my shoulder at regular intervals. And each time I did, I caught a glimpse of the creature, the Shadow Walker, observing me from a distance. Its reflective eyes seemed to follow my every move, and I couldn't help but wonder what thoughts were running through its mind. "Goodbye," I whispered, my voice catching in my throat as I acknowledged the strange bond that had formed between us, worn of curiosity and mutual respect. As the miles passed and the forest began to thin, I couldn't help but reflect on my encounter with the Shadow Walker. Though it had been a terrifying and humbling experience, it had also filled me with a sense of wonder and appreciation for the mysteries that still existed in the world. I thought back to my conversation with the local who had warned me about the creature, and I couldn't help but feel grateful for their advice. They had helped me to understand the importance of respecting the natural world and the creatures that inhabited it, and I knew that I would carry that lesson with me for the rest of my life. As I finally emerged from the forest and stepped back into the world of civilization, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness. I knew that I would never forget my encounter with the Shadow Walker, but I also knew that our paths would likely never cross again. I looked back one last time, my eyes scanning the edge of the forest for any sign of the creature, but it was gone, vanished into the shadows, as if it had never been there at all. As I continued on my journey home, I couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the experience I had been granted. I had come face to face with a being that existed on the fringes of human understanding, and I had emerged with a newfound appreciation for the power and beauty of the natural world.